Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I'm David Chen, and with me are
Devendra Hardawar.
And Jeff Kanata.
welcome to the show, everyone. On today's podcast of the Slash Filmcast, what we're going to do is discuss some what we've been watching, and then move on into an in-depth review. This week, we'll be reviewing The Rhythm Section, Reed Morano's new assassin thriller starring Blake Lively. So, a lot to get to today, but something we like to do at the beginning of many Slash Filmcast episodes is we like to get to emails, and very often corrections. This email comes in from Rob Summers from Austin, Texas, and he had a correction for something that I, David Chen, erroneously said on last week's episode. I know it's really difficult to imagine that I would make a mistake on the podcast, but sometimes, on an extremely rare occasion, it does happen.
I'm really going to savor this one, I will say. I tried to stop you all.
So Rob writes in, "Hello, my dear Slash Film hosts," or as Steve Buscemi would say, "Hello, fellow kids. I know at this point you're buried under the kindness of all of your listeners, tripping over themselves to correct you about the latest episode. I thought I would jump into the fray just to gently and respectfully point out that the term EGOT, a term standing for the ultimate goal of winning an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, was not coined by 30 Rock, as stated by Mr. Chen. EGOT is instead attributed to the great thespian known as Philip Michael Thomas, perhaps best known for his indelible performance as Ricardo Tubbs on the 80s game-changing Miami Vice series, despite his excellent work in Perry Mason, the case of the Ruthless Reporter and Swamp Thing episode.
I miss that guy, honestly, yeah.
All kidding aside, he's very good in the show. Anyway, he first discussed the term in a 1985 Playboy interview, and he qualified that the Emmy in an EGOT should be for primetime and not daytime Emmys. Despite coining the term, Thomas did not complete the goal of his own EGOT. Notable EGOT winners include Audrey Hepburn, Whoopi Goldberg, Mel Brooks, and John Legend. Notable fictional winners include Tracy Jordan. Here is a great and short Atlantic article about the EGOT origins, and it rightfully attributes its reemergence to 30 Rock. And then there's a link to an Atlantic article here that I will put in the show notes. Also, since I'm here, I want to point out that Jeff was talking about Trailer Park Boys, and he was right just to mention it along with similar comedies and The Guy with the Big Glasses. I knew immediately what he was talking about, like the rest of your listeners, who also could not wait to correct our dear hosts. For real, though, I've loved the Slash Filmcast for years. My twin brother Russ and I discuss your reviews in the same way we discuss Friends movie reviews because we think of you that way. Thank you for putting some good in the universe. If there was an EGOT for podcasters, you'd all have one. Much love, Rob from Austin, Texas.
Aw, thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate that. Even though like an EGOT for podcasters doesn't really make any sense, I appreciate the sentiment. But yes, EGOT...
No, it's because the Slash Filmcast would be optioned into a film, and then that film would be turned into the Broadway hit musical, and then that musical would then be adapted for television, and then, of course, that television series would have an album of spoken word.
Keep going, yes.
All the while, we're just keeping on our little podcast, you know? And then, but we're EGOT winners, just like 30 Rock coined.
So 30 Rock did not invent the term EGOT. I'm sorry for making people feel that that was the case, or for saying that, I should say. And but they did contribute to its reemergence. So in the end, I think I was only, I'd say, half wrong tops.
I would say that they are 100% responsible, not for its reemergence, but for any emergence whatsoever. Because ain't nobody be talking about it if it was just some offhanded comment by Michael Thomas. I'm just saying.
You're right. No, you are right. That was not the argument. That was not the argument in question.
All credit to Michael Thomas, except for the credit that involves anybody knowing what it was.
So, speaking of things that are being made into movies, did you guys see the announcement today that Disney is bringing Hamilton to the big screen?
Yeah, but in a really weird way, right?
Well, according to the news, right, after a long set of negotiations, they are filming a live performance of the show.
No, they filmed it in 2014.
Oh,
yeah, they filmed it years ago.
It's a live performance of the original cast from 2014, and they're releasing it in 2021 and announcing it here in 2020.
You got to give those things 7 years to marinate, Jeff. You know, this is like the Avatar all over again. You know,
this is not all that Broadway money, basically, and also
yeah, that's true.
The road show,
no, for sure, that's exactly what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
but this is not a Cats situation. This is not we're making the musical into a film where we're then shooting it like a film. It's not Chicago.
Not yet. Give it 5 years, Jeff, and we will also have the Hamilton film adaptation.
No doubt you are correct, Devindra. No doubt. But this particular announcement is not that, and is a kind of an odd thing. There's something that I've mentioned on the show several times now that I love is the National Theatre of London, Britain's National Theatre, does. I called it of London. I don't know if that's the correct term. Anyway, Britain's National Theatre does a series in very select theaters, usually in
Fathom events, right?
Yes, correct. And they're usually art house theaters. There's many of them here in Los Angeles. I don't know how widespread they are across America, but they are, I think, actually, maybe not actually, but I think they are actually live broadcast. Like, they broadcast them when the actors are on the stage at the same moment in movie theaters. But I could be wrong. They could be recording them and broadcasting them. But anyway, they are very limited broadcasts on a big screen of a live theater performance of the play that is currently on stage at the National Theatre. And I enjoy them very, very much. They're done really, really well. They're shot well. But it is you watching live theater in a movie theater on a big screen. And I think that's much more like what this Hamilton release is going to feel like.
Definitely. A few clarifications. First of all, it is the show was live captured in 2016, which was when it still featured the company that kind of helped build the show. So I think like Lin-Manuel Miranda was still in it at that point. Like he's not in it anymore. But
that says more about me subtracting 4 from today and getting 2014.
Oh, nice.
That's what that is. Because I knew it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I just am not prepared to be living in 2020 yet.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Or 2019, it turns out.
We're in 2020, FYI, just so you know, Jeff.
I'd rather not.
Remember when 2019 was over and we're like, man, I'm glad that's over.
Yeah, 2020 sure shit the bed within the first month. Just like we got World War III going on, we got a pandemic coming.
No time.
Yeah.
Wasted no time. 2020.
Wasted no time. Also, apparently, Disney paid $75 million for global rights for the finished film. Yeah. I think this
honestly is the price of just 4 tickets.
I think this is great because this is something I said when Cats came out. Is they should have just filmed the show. It would have been a lot less money. And arguably a better experience. Although, because Cats is so singularly weird and terrible, it will become a cult classic. But I think
there are also filmed Cats shows out there. Like they've been on, I believe, PBS and other places. I saw it somewhere as a kid, so that exists.
But I think one of the experiences I had when I was watching Hamilton live, I saw it at the Pantages in Los Angeles, is wow, that was an incredible theater-going experience. I wish everyone could have it, and it's unfortunate that not everyone can because it's not playing everywhere, or if it is playing somewhere, the tickets might be extremely expensive.
And also, like, most of the seats that you can probably afford are way in the back. Like, bad theater seats, I think, are, as much as I love the live theater experience, like, I saw Hamilton maybe halfway back in the original theater where it started here and I could see everything, but I really could not see a lot of, fine details. So I actually would love going back and watching something like this and being like you're in the front row, basically, right? Yeah. Like getting a full view of it.
Yeah, according to Thomas Kail, who directed the show, he's very happy that, quote, we are thrilled for fans of the show and new audiences across the world to experience what it was like on stage and in the audience when we shot this at the Richard Rogers Theater in June of 2016. We wanted to give everyone the same seat, which is what this film can provide, end quote. So it really is kind of like, hey, that's one of the great things about movies is there's like a democratizing element to them that like everyone, president, the president of the United States and, the person who lives down the street from you can have the same experience watching this movie because it's the same kind of piece of media.
We chose seat 16F. It's not a great seat, but it is the same seat for everybody.
It is the same seat for everyone, yeah.
So it was about $50 cheaper than the seat next to it, so that's just where they had to film.
You'll hear the lady next to you snoring, and the fella 2 rows ahead of you going, "What's he saying? What did he say?"
They're talking too fast.
I'm very excited.
That's not how Hamilton really looked.
I'm very excited to see this movie get out into the world and for more people to experience it, for more people to talk about it. It's going to be great. And
the bidding war for that, by the way, must have been something.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure it's like Disney just like had the lock from the beginning, but I'm sure like that would have been a fascinating story to hear how whoever got the rights to that and how that whole deal went down.
4-year-long bidding war, evidently, because they just sat on this thing and they're like, hey, we got it. We got it.
There is a couple things. First of all, like Lin-Manuel Miranda does have like a relationship with Disney. He wrote songs for Moana and for the new Mary Poppins, right? So like he does kind of have a bit of a home there.
In Mary Poppins, yeah.
Yeah, he's in Mary Poppins as well. But also, it's kind of an interesting financial question of when is the right time to turn on the film money spigot, right, for a musical like this, because
when they offer $75 million,
that's apparently the moment. That is apparently the moment. But yeah, I mean, there's many popular musicals like think about like Book of Mormon or Wicked that have not been made into films yet because they're still milking it on Broadway and in live performances around the world. So the Wicked musical is something that's been talked about, but like again, this is probably going to beat Wicked to the big screen. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would actually. I've seen Wicked. I was probably in like among the last rows. So I saw absolutely nothing because that is in a giant theater here in New York. So that's one of those things. I would like to see Wicked for real one day rather than hear the music.
But Dave, you're saying that the Wicked is not a film yet because the musical is still too popular. Is that what you're saying?
No, actually, that's not what I'm saying. Because the Wicked musical is actually scheduled for release in December of 2021. So there is going to be a Universal-backed version of that movie.
I do feel like they waited a little too long for Wicked. Like the cultural conversation around Wicked is not there right now. But Hamilton's still hot.
You kidding me, Divinger? Yeah. Whenever I go into work, people are like, "Did you see Wicked over the weekend?" No, I'm just joking. That doesn't happen. I agree with you. I think Hamilton is striking while the iron is hot, and Wicked maybe is a little bit too long. Book of Mormon is another musical I'd love to see on the big screen. And I think just filming people doing it on a live stage, performing the musical on a live stage, that is extremely compelling in and of itself. I don't think you need cat morphing technology to make it more interesting.
I would like to see some of these recorded in like VR or something too. Because like there's a lot you could do with that. Like just the immersiveness of something like Hamilton, like being feet from the stage or like being able to like look around everything. That would be kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Well, the Hamilton musical is something you can look forward to. Again, I think October 2021 is when it's going to happen. So, and it'll hit theaters in that time frame. So, really psyched. Okay, let's get to what we've been watching this week. David Hardo, what have you been watching?
This week I poured one out for The Good Place, which is it's done. It's done. It's finally done. After 4 seasons. This show is incredible, guys. I don't know how far along you've watched or how much of it you've seen, but I remember talking about The Good Place here on the show and being like, oh, yeah, this is a really fun thing from Mike Schur. Has a really interesting premise. What we never really talked about is like how mind-boggling the twists have been, and I'm not going to spoil any of that here. It is all up on Hulu right now. It may be streaming elsewhere too. But this show... It is a fun sitcom. It has a great premise about people trying to find themselves in the afterlife, basically. But it's also a deep exploration of philosophy and moral philosophy. And I think that bit of it was not apparent from the start. Because like this is a show that can be really, really high-minded and talk about the works of the greatest philosophers and then go straight into a fart joke. And it's like how it balances those two things is kind of remarkable. The twists have been consistently astounding. How it changes things up, and the characters they built. Like I love this core cast, and what an amazing cast too. Like everybody loves Kristen Bell already, but like Jamila Jamil coming in from practically nowhere. She was a TV announcer, I believe, in the UK. William Jackson Harper, we'd never really seen him before. Darcy Carden is now like a phenomenon on her own, and Manny Jacinto. This show ended in such a perfect way. I'm not going to say anything about the final season because if I give you one detail, it kind of spoils like where the series as a whole goes. Let's just say it is, I think, one of the most plot dense and nuanced and interesting TV narratives I've ever seen. and certainly an astounding one to see coming from the framework of a sitcom. It's so good, and the finale made me cry. The finale made me tear up. The finale made me question existence and how we exist as human beings and how we live with each other and what we owe to each other as people. It is such a beautiful and deep show. So guys, you should watch it. I think especially right now in this trash fire of a world, it is a perfect show.
It's an amazing science fiction show, right?
Basically,
it's good sci-fi, and the way that good sci-fi comments on the real world in really interesting ways. I'm only about halfway through season 2, and
okay,
I'm in that.
You got a lot ahead of you.
I do indeed,
wild.
and I have that terrible situation where I really dig the show, but my wife doesn't care for it, so basically means I don't get to watch it. But I pick up episodes as I can, but I'm slowly working my way through it, and I was blown away at the end of season 1, and I know that it continues to have twists and turns. So it's
one of the best TV twists probably ever, because I think it kind of came out of nowhere. But if you were paying attention, I think you kind of got a little bit of hints of it. But what's astounding to me is like they really stuck the landing in terms of like the philosophy of it, like the ideas of what they're building, and it's a show about how to be good, and it takes some really dry philosophy and things. Like I spent my entire college experience reading, Western philosophy, and it's hard to read. It's hard to parse. It's hard to understand. I can only imagine like how difficult it must have been to like transform a lot of those ideas and turn it into a TV show that is easily consumable by, anyone. And I'm glad that the show has been a success too. So yeah, shout out to The Good Place. Shout out to Mike Schur, who I think is pretty much he is my favorite TV comedy showrunner right now, because like everything he does is just gold.
All right, that's The Good Place. Just wrapped up its 4th and final season. Devindra, what else have you been watching?
So take all my goodwill about The Good Place and kind of go the exact opposite way. And that's kind of how I feel about Avenue 5, which is the new Armando Iannucci show on HBO about it's about a space cruise ship. And I guess that's all I can say, because like there's certain elements of it that also they tried to keep as a surprise. But stars Hugh Laurie, Josh Gad, Zach Woods is in it. A bunch of familiar faces, and my God, to see this is a show. It is so lifeless. It is so like, it's.
So we should say like Armando Iannucci, right? He's the creator of The Thick of It, of Veep. These are all-timer shows. Mm-hmm. Like some of my favorite episodes / television shows of all time. Yeah.
Mile-a-minute jokes. Those shows can't stop being funny, right? You often struggle to keep up with the pace of the humor in those shows.
And this show also is on HBO.
Yes.
And it has clearly a monster budget.
Yeah.
Because it is a very expensive looking show. I couldn't make it through the whole first episode.
It is rough. I thought, okay, maybe the first episode is an anomaly or something. No, the second episode is the same. The third episode is the same. It is a show where people constantly like throw out jokes, and it doesn't even seem like the actors like what they're saying. Like there's no like patter in the room. Like there's no response from the other actors. Like it's just a show of constantly dead jokes being spouted, and then we move on to the next scene. And then it's also kind of bleak and dark at the same time too. Like it is. I don't know what to make of this thing.
I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah, why couldn't you finish it, Jeff? What's
everything that Devindra said? It just felt. I mean, 10 minutes in, I turned to my wife and I was like, I can't even tell you what this is.
Is this bad?
I don't even know what I'm watching. Like, who are these people, and what is this show trying to tell me? Like, it feels like we pick up in the middle of season 4. And the show is like, oh, don't worry, you like these people because you like these actors. We don't need to tell you anything about them for you to like them and be on board because you like these actors already. And I'm like, I don't know anything about these people, and the jokes are not landing, and I don't know. The whole thing was bizarre. It looked expensive, and I was like, to what end? But yeah, I didn't give it much of a chance at all. I just was like, on to the next.
Yeah,
we're in the golden age of television, boys. I ain't got time. I ain't got time for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, abandoned ship.
Yeah,
abandoned ship. It feels like HBO just gave Iannucci kind of a blank check to make whatever he wanted, and maybe there wasn't as much oversight as some other shows. Like, I don't know what went wrong, but it feels. I hear it gets better after the first couple episodes, or I hear like you start to figure out what it is, but I just kind of don't care anymore.
So that's Avenue 5 on HBO. I'm sorry that it's not good. It's certainly looking. There's so much talent behind it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But
how do you make Hugh Laurie not funny? How do you do that?
I don't know, man. They did it. They did it.
Devindra, what else have you been watching?
Josh Gad, dreadfully unfunny.
I feel like Josh Gad can be hit or miss, but what's his face from Silicon Valley? Like the show does nobody any favors. Zach Woods, like, yeah, it's just everyone is just out there to die in every single scene, basically.
Man, that show, I can't remember the name of it now, but that show that Josh Gad did with Billy Crystal, such an underappreciated gem of a show.
Oh.
Did you guys ever watch that? I can't remember.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
It was like The Comedians or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was called like The Comedians. And it was about Josh Gad and Billy Crystal making a show together. I mean, the premise of the show was these two actors making the show together, and they played Josh Gad as if he was a terrible person. It was very funny. I mean, it was sort of a like Curb Your Enthusiasm style where people are playing themselves. Very, very, very funny. It was great.
But it lasted for one season on FX, I think. Yeah, but
I think it had more than one season. But
no, I'm pretty sure it's one season. So
it was great.
Yeah, I've heard good things. It just is like it was one of the casualties of FX, unfortunately. Yeah. So Devindra, what else have you been watching?
So let's I feel like this has been a roller coaster of emotion, all the stuff I've seen. I've seen some early episodes of Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet, the new Apple TV Plus series from the It's Always Sunny folks. And happy to say this show rules. So back into
TV show comedy. About video games, it's about
video
games.
Good.
Can't be good.
It's about a game studio. I think it's set in Canada or just like a nameless city where game devs are. But it stars Rob McElhenney as this like visionary creative director for a game studio, and it's sort of like it just like turns it into something like HBO Silicon Valley, where they're dealing with like basic day-to-day things of like, oh, I want to program what do we do for this expansion for this game, and they fight over particular features. The first episode is about a shovel and what can a shovel do in a very violent game, and maybe somebody wants it to be a more constructive tool for people to do like Minecraft type stuff, and maybe somebody else just wants to smash people in the head with it. And it's those sorts of debates. It is really funny, has a great cast. I was never a big fan of It's Always Sunny. Like, to me, it just felt like it's a very chaotic show, and I just like that energy just never really vibed with me. Like, I could never really stand it for too long. It's sort of like the Curb Your Enthusiasm thing for me too. Like, I can take half an hour of these shows maybe once per week, and I guess that was fine for how they were being released, but it's really hard to catch up in a show like that. This is really funny. Also has Danny Pudi in it. It's great to see Danny Pudi in something regular again after Community. This show has F. Murray Abraham in it as a sort of like 70s sci-fi writer who's now like doing highfalutin game stories, and he is just, man, this guy's an Oscar winner, right? Like, this guy is just like straight up silly in the show, and I think that's really fun too. And a lot of people you recognize, like Ashley Birch is in it too, and she's been doing game videos and game stuff for a while and voiceovers. I think this is a show that really understands the video game culture as it is now. During the first episode, they spend a lot of time trying to impress a streamer. I'm trying to look up his name. What is his name? His name is Pootie Shoe, and he looks like he's just like, it's really funny to see a very large corporation, or at least a company with a lot of money behind it, basically hoping and praying that a 14-year-old game streamer loves their expansion, because this is all your business rests on. It's like what this 14-year-old thinks, and it's hilarious, but it's also, man, this is just kind of true, right? This is the world right now in games. It's kind of weird out there. Anyway, I'm really digging it. It is premiering this Friday on Apple TV Plus. Definitely worth checking it out.
That's Mythic Quest. Jeff and I look forward to seeing it, and we will talk more about it in depth on next week's or a couple weeks episode from now of the podcast. One quick question before we move on, Devindra, which is like, Silicon Valley at its best, I felt like was a very incisive skewering of the actual culture of the real life Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little bit wondering like how well this game show Mythic Quest does that for the games industry, considering I believe Activision is a co-executive producer on the show. So I felt like, could they really make fun of that much stuff? Given that it's made by one of the biggest game makers in the world right now is contributing to it creatively.
I need to look a bit deeper into it. Like, I definitely noticed like scenes that look like they're from Assassin's Creed or something. So I figured there was some sort of relationship. I feel like this is a show that is making fun of like the sexism issues, like in a way that's meaningful. Like the macho male creative director just can't accept that his one of his female writers or programmers just has a better idea than he does. Like, it does things like that. I don't know how much more incisive it can be. I've only seen like 2 episodes so far, but I'm hoping it does something interesting. Like, it's funny, and I think just making people think about these issues is an important thing too.
All right. That's Mythic Quest. It's out on Apple TV Plus this Friday. Before we move on, why don't we thank our first sponsor for today and our only sponsor for today, Feels. Devendra, you want to tell people about Feels?
Sure. Well, here's the thing. I love CBD because it's been a thing that's helped me deal with stress and anxiety. And Feels in particular, I think, is great quality CBD just because there's a lot of bad stuff out there. In New York, you can go to Bodega and buy CBD-infused cookies and candies and all sorts of things, but you never know how good it is. Feels is high-quality CBD that's delivered right to your doorstep, so you don't even have to leave home for it. It helps to naturally reduce stress, anxiety, pain, and sleeplessness. For me, I've really enjoyed taking it before flights. It's become pretty much my flight ritual, and it is astounding. Like, I'll take a nice dose of CBD. I'll take a nice dose of Feels before I fly to Taiwan for Computex every year. That is a 16-hour flight, and that is a stressful situation, but at least it's direct. So I take my Feels. I just chill out. I go through security. I wait for the plane. Like, the entire flight is just a really nice, chill, zen moment for me instead of being like a stressful situation. So Feels I really appreciate because it's super easy to take. You just place a few drops under your tongue, let it sit there for a bit, and it's kind of like instantly de-anxiety making. I don't know if there's a word for that. They also offer a support hotline and text messaging support to help you figure out what dosage you want. I think the really interesting thing too is that it's pretty natural. So some people, let me move on for this. Yep. I think it's interesting that it's pretty natural too. So you don't have to deal with a hangover or addiction or any high or anything like that. It's just like, it is a nice thing that lowers your level of anxiety. So you can join the Feels community to get Feels delivered to your door every month, and you'll save money on every order, and you can pause or cancel at any time. And at this point, we should say representations regarding the efficacy and safety of Feels have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The FDA only evaluates food and drugs, not supplements like Feels. It's not intended to diagnose, prevent, treat, or cure any disease. And if you have any questions about this stuff, as always, talk to your doctor. But for me personally, Feels has me feeling my best every day, and it can help you too. Become a member today by going to feels.com/filmcast, and that is the / character, and you'll get 50% off of your first order with free shipping. That's FEALS.com/filmcast to become a member and get 50% off automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. Feels.com/filmcast.
All right, let's move on to what else we've been watching this week. I had a chance to check out Anna. Have you guys heard of this movie, Anna, directed by Luc Besson?
Luc Besson.
It came out in 2019. I'll just.
Are you telling me Luc Besson made a female assassin movie, Dave?
I am telling you.
Oh, this is the one where the female assassin realizes that she's only using 2% of her brain.
No, that's Lucy.
Is this the one where the female assassin realizes that love is the fifth element?
I'm going to read the plot summary. Beneath a woman's striking beauty lies a secret that will unleash her indelible strength and skill to become one of the most feared assassins on the planet. Now, I had seen a trailer for this movie, a year ago, actually, like when this first came out. and I'd actually pitched it as something we should review on the podcast, and it was shot down. We never actually reviewed it, but it recently went, like, the rental for Anna went on sale for $1, and I'm like, okay, I'll throw $1 behind this.
Here's a trash movie before you see another trashy spy movie. Sure.
and then it's like I started getting these warnings from iTunes, like, hey, your $1 rental of Anna will expire in 36 hours. You know, I'm like, oh, I gotta get to it, I guess. And so I watched it, and this movie got a 36% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it is in fact not very good. However, there are a couple of pretty solid action scenes in it. There's one action scene in this movie that I would say is like John Wick level in terms of how well it's done. And one day, probably even right now, you'll be able to see that scene on YouTube or something, so you don't really need to watch the movie. But there's nothing really new that this movie brings to the table from a plot perspective. It's the plot is completely ludicrous in terms of how they they just pull this woman off the street and train her to be like the world's best assassin, and it's really
Nikita, if you will.
Yeah, it's really like the anti-rhythm section, which we'll get to in a little bit. And I think it's kind of funny, like, as a cultural artifact in that regard, and it just is straight out of the '90s, like in terms of the sensibility. There's like these really cheesy sex scenes in the movie, and it's just like, this is something you could watch like on TNT or the USA Network in the '90s, basically. And it's too bad because I don't know. I feel like these female-led spy movies have just not done very well at the box office.
Atomic Blonde was excellent, but did not.
It was excellent, but it was considered like not. I mean, it probably did okay from box office perspective, but it was not a hit. And that's really that's probably the best one out of the three that we've mentioned. You know, between Rhythm Section, Anna, and Atomic Blonde, I would say Atomic Blonde is the best film. And
also,
even
Black
that
Widow
movie
coming up.
Of the what's coming up, Devendra?
Black Widow.
Oh, Black Widow.
Yeah. If you're looking for one of these ones to do well, I think we just mentioned the one that will.
Yeah.
Let's not forget about there's another one last year, Red Sparrow.
Red Sparrow.
Red Sparrow. We reviewed it.
Yeah. So a lot of these movies are pretty bad, but also they don't do very well. You know, and that's a shame because it feels like they're all kind of taking a different slice of the same situation. You know, Red Sparrow, I would say, is almost like a psychological thriller in terms of how it was the story was told, and then Anna is just over the top cheesy '90s action movie, and I actually I have to say I did kind of enjoy it on some level because there's a few moments where this is a thing that happens repeatedly throughout the movie where, you know, like Anna will bust into a place and then kill someone, and then like later on you find out she didn't actually kill that person, and it'll be like you'll see a card on the screen that says like 6 weeks ago, and then you'll find out like everything that happened that like led up to that moment and why she didn't end up killing that person. And that happens.
Let me ask you, Dave, did you like this more than Rhythm Section?
Like is a strong word. It's
Probably.
It's so different. It's so different. I will certainly say the action is better than the Rhythm Section. You know, but really the action is just that one scene that I told you about. There's just one scene that happens in a restaurant that is really really impressive.
It's also the trailer too for this movie.
It's also in the trailer. But
the action is better than the Rhythm Section because it has action.
Basically,
you could say that. You could say that. I think that it's a shame because I feel like there's not that much separating a movie like Anna or the Rhythm Section from John Wick, except for the action. Because I think the plot of John Wick is absolutely ridiculous, makes no sense, right? And it like falls apart under the simplest of scrutiny. But the action is so good in that series of films that it doesn't matter.
It's how you put the pieces together too. Like it's about the leads, it's about the supporting characters, it's about the world building.
Yeah.
We'll talk all about all of this in a Rhythm Section.
Yeah, but I feel like Atomic Blonde had a lot of those things too, and it didn't do very well. In any case, Anna was a box office failure. But you know, it kind of is so cheesy that I'm kind of like, yeah, if you are looking for kind of cheesy 90s action movie and you're looking for like these extremely outlandish twists, like 3 weeks ago, you know, cut to 3 weeks ago, and, you know, actually so-and-so knew about the killing all along, you know, all that stuff. I'm like, all right, that's kind of fun. I had a little bit of fun with it. So
I'll watch this on Netflix probably.
Yeah, if and when it hits a streaming service, I'd say it's worth checking out. And it's just it's really silly. It's really silly. So the movie's Anna. It's available right now on video on demand. Also had a chance to check out Cheer, the new Netflix documentary series about competitive cheerleading. Have you guys heard of this series? It's all the buzz.
Nobody will shut up about this series, Dave.
Love it.
Jeff, it's interesting. As I was watching the show, I was thinking of you describing your dilemma or your predicament with, sitting down at the end of a long day with your wife and trying to figure out something to watch. And I was like, this is probably something that would be good for Jeff and his wife to watch.
This show has been recommended to me so many times.
Is there a reason you have resisted the recommendation?
I just don't like reality TV very much. And I know that there are great reality TVs. Huh?
Reality TV? You think this is reality TV? I don't consider it. I consider it a documentary series.
Sure.
Yeah, you guys love documentaries. Come on.
I feel like reality TV is almost like pejorative for this.
It is pejorative.
What? Well, why do you think this is reality TV? Why is this reality TV and I don't know, Icarus isn't reality TV?
Having not seen the show, are you about to tell me about all of the personal drama and who's going to make it and who's not going to make it, and will they get to the end and will the final the final competition go in their favor or not? Sure sounds like reality TV to me, sir.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm being cynical.
Isn't that also a documentary? I don't understand.
Yeah, it sounds like Jeff needs some cheer in his life.
I do need some cheer.
I think you need some cheer in your life, and also I'm honestly I'm staggered I'm shook by what you've just said, because I'm like I didn't even think it feels like I need to surmount a bunch of stuff just to get you on the same page that this might be something good.
I'm sure it's great. I'm sure if I watch it, I'll be hugely invested in these kids doing awesome stuff. I don't know. I have a stumbling block for the reality TV-ification of everything, and it's not what I want to turn on when I sit down at night.
I don't get what about it is what you don't want to turn that's what about let's say I concede your point, which I'm not, that this is reality TV. I'm not conceding that, but let's say I do. What about reality TV do you find so off-putting?
They tend to use the interpersonal relationships of those people to create drama, and for real people. And I know I have many friends who are very involved in the creation of reality television here in Los Angeles, and I know how the sausage is made. And it is not. Again, you say this is a documentary series, so be it. But
so be it. I mean, I don't trust you at all, David.
Well,
but so be it. Basically, but if that's what you say, then maybe that's correct.
I have no doubt that this is a documentary about. And I've watched many documentaries. I love documentaries about real things. I'm getting invested. I've talked at length about them. I'm digging my own hole here, and I'm going to get a lot of hate mail because you're putting me on the spot. But the idea of watching a bunch of kids in a school try to win their cheerleading championship and the interpersonal drama that happens along the way is a little too close to reality TV for me to get excited about it. And I'm sure I'm going to be wrong. I'm going to get lots of hate mail about this. I know it. But I know how reality TV is made, and it just anything that sniffs like it to me, it just is like I don't really want to play that game.
I can respect that, Jeff. I mean, I think you're wrong, but I can respect that it's like a coherent viewpoint that you have, which is that reality TV often sensationalizes / exaggerates / completely fabricates conflict between characters and serves it up for
the detriment of human beings.
Right, to the
detriment of human beings. Yeah. And you're going to tell me that this show doesn't do that and is much more like a documentary, and that's fine, and I'm sure it's great, and I've been tempted to watch it just because of how many people have told me it's great. But man, does it just not seem like something I want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
All right. So now that we've gone through that, I can tell you what I actually think of the show, which is that I've seen.
Hey, you asked me, man. I didn't interject my opinion.
No. I wasn't. That wasn't a slam on you. I was just saying like.
You're not the one that's gonna get all the hate mail, bro.
I'm glad. No, I'm glad you told me so I can structure what I'm about to say, in order that it may have maximum impact on you. Hopefully, but I'll say first of all, I've only seen one episode, so this just comes from one episode, and I might not know the full extent of things.
I think there's only 6, right? No, it's very short.
Yeah, there's only 6 episodes, and they're about 1 hour each. So it is an investment of time. It's a little bit of investment. I would say that I recognize nothing in what you described of reality TV in this show. Like I don't think what you described resembles a show at all. I mean, maybe a little bit in the sense that they're both kind of they both have the same bones as each other. Like they both consist of a competition and interviews with people. You know, that is true. But I do think the way the movie is shot, the way the series, I should say, Cheer, is shot, the way it's structured, just literally just the look of it, it would be like calling like. Did you ever see Chef's Table on Netflix, Jeff?
I think I watched an episode or 2 of Chef's Table. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be like calling that reality TV. You know, like I would just like. Wow, that's just like a fundamentally like misapplied label, in my opinion. If you call it Chef's Table reality TV, like. And I think because when you watch a show like Chef's Table, the thing that you get from Chef's Table is an appreciation of the art of what these people are doing, right? Like that is the driving motivation behind why those documentaries are made.
And to be honest, you can even get that from something like The Great British Bake Off, which is straight up a reality show.
True. And I can understand, but I can also understand Jeff's disdain for something like that. But in the case of Cheer, I think this is one of the things I love of like introducing a wide audience to a subculture. I actually directed a short film a while ago called Dr. B about yo-yo competition. That like I love introducing people to subcultures. I love it when people introduce me to subcultures. And this series, Cheer on Netflix, gives you an appreciation of what it is these people are doing. It's way more orders of magnitude more difficult than what you see on the sidelines of a football game. It's intense. It's body breaking what they do, the pain they go through, but also the benefits that it gives them from in terms of like organizing them socially, in terms of giving them something to focus on. Like many people are saying like that this cheerleading saved their lives because otherwise they would have ended up on the street, and it's all very powerful stuff. So. I reject the label of reality TV as describing Cheer. I think this is something you and your wife would very much enjoy, and I think you'll be deeply moved by it by the end. That last part is a prediction because I haven't seen the whole show, but from everything I've seen, that's what's going to happen. So
I'll be checking it out in over the next week too. Like maybe we can talk about it coming up.
This sounds like a show I would love, Dave.
How's my defensive Cheer? Yeah.
I gotta watch it. I gotta watch this show, man. This is a good show.
I'll say
no, I think I was too full throated in my
No, it's cool.
opposition.
It's cool. You do the full throat, and then I'm coming back at you. I'm coming back with a haymaker. That's what it is. And if you watch the first couple episodes,
this is some reality programming right here.
I got the sense.
Emotion.
I don't know where I got it. Maybe I misread something or misheard someone. The show has been talked about a lot around me and near me. And somehow I got the sense that there was an element of, is Chad going to fall for Jenny? And is Jenny going to like Chad? I'm making those names up. But there was some sense of there being like that element to it, which I could be completely wrong. And I was under the misapprehension of. But I had somehow gotten this thing in my head that it was like,
well, I can't promise that
high school drama, instead of really being about, like your yo-yo short.
I can't promise that won't happen in the show, but here's what I will say is that I feel like the aesthetics of the show are very different than a normal reality show. Like just in terms of how it's lit, the look of it, it has a very filmic look to it, a lot of reality television, I feel like, looks kind of cheap, and it's shot at either 30 frames or 60 frames a second. It's very like, it looks like a video. You know what I mean? Whereas this show, I feel like, is very filmic in terms of how it looks, and the way that this show captures, you know, just like Chef's Table is like slow motion of cooking the ribeye steak on the, you know, cast iron grill that's 100 years old or whatever. This show applies that kind of same eye to what these incredibly talented people are doing with their bodies, and it's breathtaking. So I even,
well, there's certainly nothing about the cheerleading that turned me off. I do recognize how incredibly athletic and amazing that sport, I guess is the word to use, is, because I've been around it. I mean, my sister was a competitive cheerleader for a long time, and also when I was doing the Texas Shakespeare Festival, we were housed near sort of world-class competitors in that area, and I saw it up close. So I don't mean to belittle that in any stretch of the imagination. I just find a lot of that, you know, real world competition stuff to be so exploitive and off-putting. That's really all I was saying.
It makes a lot of sense. I think your viewpoint is like very defensible. You know, like I don't have any I'm just like, I totally understand that you're against those things. Is this thing the actual, like, does this thing actually match the thing you're against? Is my question, and I don't think we'll actually know that until you give it a shot. So maybe
Jeff,
check it out for an
I have a show
episode
for you. It's called The Circle. I hear it's great. Just give it a shot.
Have you heard of the show The Circle? This reality show on Netflix. That is what I would.
It is everything you hate.
Yeah.
It is everything you hate. Yeah.
I'm sure. I saw that on the old Netflix menu, but I didn't hover long enough. Usually, I do a lot of my watching of the 30-second auto roll on Netflix. You know, I get the gist.
All right. Well, that's Cheer. It's on Netflix. I am going to go the distance with this show. I'm going to watch every episode. So maybe we'll be able to talk about it next week. All right. That's what I've been watching. Anna and Cheer. How about you, Jeff? What have you been watching?
Well, friend of the show, Dan Trachtenberg, sent me a text the other day saying I had to check out Dracula on Netflix. Now, Dracula isn't necessarily an IP that's going to get me to leap out of my chair and tune in. So it's not something that I even lingered over very much. I kind of saw a new Dracula show on Netflix, but didn't even really pay attention much to it. Not realizing that this Dracula show is Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat.
Yeah.
And once I found that out, I was very excited. And
AKA the creators of the third best Sherlock of the last 10 years. Right?
The creators of that Sherlock. I have to say, though, Jeff, I did talk about the show and the fact that it was from the Sherlock creators.
You did?
Yeah. I like to see what has more power, a text from Dan Trachtenberg or a conversation on this very show.
I mean, I don't think you want to know the answer to that. I don't remember you mentioning this.
Yeah, I don't see it on the what we've been watching.
It's not on the list, but I did mention it as we were talking about that.
Gotcha. All right.
Did you watch it, Devindra?
I watched it's 3 episodes, right? And they're all like movie length.
Yes.
I watched 2 of it. I'm gonna have a hard time watching the third one because the second one is not good.
Oh, did you get to the end of the second one?
Yeah.
You did?
It is sort of like, to me, it feels like what they did with Sherlock when, like, oh man, there was some good stuff. They can have a lot of fun sometimes. And then there's some just bad episodes, just like straight up bad. So I don't know. It feels a little hit or miss for me.
I could not disagree with you more. This show is awesome. So back when we were doing the Totally Rad show, actually my first Stephen Moffat anything was a show called Jekyll, or as the show called it, Jekyll, which
that was good. Yeah,
really good. So if anybody listening hasn't seen Jekyll, I don't even know how you find it. It's got to be streaming somewhere. But man, an awesome thing. And you know, I love Sherlock, and I never really got into Doctor Who, but we were talking last week about Picard and how we were all kind of pining for a kind of Star Trek that was intellectual and cerebral, and the chess match of matching wits against an enemy rather than punching them in the face. nobody does that better than Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat. That's their bread and butter. And they have done that with Dracula. They have taken Dracula and turned it into a verbal matching of wits between Dracula and this nun character that you meet in the first episode. But where it goes from there is just awesome. And the thing that they do so well is they take these rules that we all know from the lore of Dracula, and they start picking them apart and poking at them and stretching them and figuring out like what are the ramifications of that, and coming up with really interesting sequences that are built on the backbone of that lore that we know so well. And then the actors in the show, I don't even know how to pronounce the Danish actor who plays Dracula, Claes Bang, I think maybe is his name, and Dolly Wells are the two leads. They are both delicious. They're just chewing scenery, saying these wonderful words, pairing off. I mean, this is Picard versus Q. It is, the ideas are the center stage, the ideas that they throw at each other, the concept of their battle. It is not action packed. It is thrilling because of how they're anticipating the other one, using things against them, outthinking, analyzing. So good. And then the end of episode 2 is like, what? Wow. Episode 3 gets a little goofy, but it kind of all in a very, very good way. These do feel like 3 films that are just linked, but they are 3 very independent films about Dracula. Each of them really cool and different in their own way, but man, I don't know. There are some twists and turns that I found to be so fun, so unexpected, so cool. I loved episode 2. Episode 2 is like a bottle episode in the best possible way, and then episode 3 just goes bonkers, man. It is this is really fun, interesting television. I hadn't heard anybody talking about Dracula, and I think it's like, you go, Dracula, what a boring IP. This takes it and makes it not boring at all. To me, it is fresh and modern and fun. The portrayal of Dracula is great because he's wry, he's charming, he's not a cartoon character. It is British intelligent. It's Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty, but sucking your blood. It's so good, man. It's so good, so good.
They're the Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty of sucking your blood. Is what's happening. All right,
Dave, you gotta watch this, man.
Okay, I will check out. I will check out at least an episode of Dracula.
I think you'll have feelings about it. Yeah.
If you check out an episode of Cheer, how about that?
I will do that. I will do that. And I will say this. I want to say this also. One of the things that I'm so excited about with the show is that it's 3 episodes. And I feel like we are in the golden age of television. And I tune in. I know that each episode is an hour and a half, so it's basically like watching 3 movies.
Episodes, man.
It's 3 movies. But the fact that there's only 3 and each of these could have been 2 or 3 episodes. I mean, there's enough that happens in each of them. But the fact that they weren't, the fact that it's 3 episodes, I go, yeah, I'll watch a show that's only 3 episodes because I'm in. And I kind of feel like as television is getting so much better and better, and the British seasons or series as they're called have always been much shorter. I mean, Sherlock was like 3 episodes as well. But I love the idea of we talked about Cheer being 6 episodes. A lot of these shows are, we're like 12 and then 10 and then 8. Now we're 6. Now we're 3. I feel like we can have a season of TV that's 1 episode, and it'd be like, isn't that a movie? No, it's golden age of television, and I'm into it. Just have a single season episode, and it's amazing. I don't need 12 episodes anymore. I used to say I don't need 24 episodes. Now I don't need 12. Give me 3.
You don't
Three
even need
solid
5.
Episodes.
You don't even need 5.
Yeah.
Anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, just 3.
It is crazy, by the way. TV shows used to have to do 24 episodes, especially for like the 1-hour ones. Like that is what killed Lost, by the way. Like it is just hard to keep a narrative up for that long. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's Dracula. It's on Netflix right now. I'll check out an episode. We'll come back next week. On that note, starting next week, I just want to reiterate something that I mentioned on last week's episode of the podcast. We are going to be changing up the format of the podcast. Starting next week, we're going to actually be splitting our main review and our what we've been watching into 2 separate episodes. And so next week, there will be just a review, and the week after is going to be what we've been watching. And we may, like reverse that order the following weeks. Who knows? It really depends on what is going to be the movie that's coming out. And we are going to be interested in people's feedback. There's many ways to share feedback. You can tweet at us. You can email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. And, of course, you can comment in the Slack Filmcast at slackfilmcast.com as well. And we'll be keeping an eye out on what the feedback is. We'll be eager to know how people think it's working. And, of course, we'll have our own thoughts about how it's working. But just want to mention it again so people are not alarmed when they see a review-only episode followed by what we've been watching. I will say one thing, though, which is that there is concern about, like, what if a big movie comes out on one of the off weeks, And it's like, well, I think, gentlemen, that we would figure out a way to pull it together to review a big movie on one of the off weeks. There's only like maybe 2 to 3 movies a year that I feel would fall into that category, though. Like Tenet, Christopher Nolan's movie. Like if that came on an off week, we'd probably figure out a way to review that, on that week. But otherwise, there's very few movies that I feel like people must know our thoughts immediately. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
People have always had to wait a few days after the movies come out anyway to hear our thoughts. That's one of the key things of the podcast is we release on a few days after the movie comes out. And the way I figure it, like you'll just have a few extra days on top of that now to watch the movie before you listen to a review. So in any case, we want to thank all the people who donated to the show who make it possible. Thanks to subscribers Tobias Obach, Iker Maruri, William Fisher, Eric Highgraf, and Matt Hedke for subscribing at the rate of $2 per month. If you want to do that, go to slashfilm.com, click on the Slash Filmcast tab, and use the PayPal links on the side of the page. Also, thanks for people who made one-time donations. I'm thinking of Stephen Theus, Eric from California, who writes, I can't tell you how many times I've been impressed by Jeff's witty rhymes. They deserve compensation. My humble donation, literally tens of dozens of dimes.
That's well done.
Indeed.
Well done.
Thanks
Tens of dozens of dimes.
Tens of dozens of dimes. Thanks also to Derek Crudell, Richard Polish, Matthew M. from Richard, Virginia, and Ryan, who writes in, quote, I have learned through years of listening to the Slash Filmcast that trying to get Dave to watch Firefly is an exercise in futility. However, I believe there's still hope. I've turned many...
It's been nearly 20 years at this point, right? Firefly was like 2001, 2002. Yeah, it's been a while.
Jesus.
Dave's resistance to Firefly, his denial of watching Firefly can almost buy alcohol.
However, I believe there's still hope. I've turned many a hesitant friend onto the show by showing them the movie Serenity. No, not the cinematic dumpster fire starring Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway from 2019. How dare you, by the way. But the 2005 sci-fi masterclass that launched Joss Whedon's big screen career and provided some much-needed closure for fans of the prematurely canceled TV show. My donation is in the exact amount of the cost of a 4K Blu-ray of Serenity on Amazon. Perhaps this can shame Dave into dipping his toe into the shiny waters of the Firefly universe and talking about it on a future What We've Been Watching episode. So here's my question for you, Devindra. You've already tried to shame me by buying me the Firefly complete series on Blu-ray.
Yes.
But
it's in your home. It's on Netflix, I think. Like, it's easily accessible.
Can someone watch just Serenity without watching Firefly? And, like, could that be like a gateway drug into the Fireflies?
I mean, it's completely backwards. No, like it doesn't.
No,
I've heard people do this.
Don't do it. Yeah.
So sure, but it's a very confusing movie, and if you don't even know who these people are, like it would be like watching Rise of the Skywalker and trying to keep track of everything going on. It's not a good plan. you know, I hope you check it out at some point, Dave. But
I might. I mean,
we've
that's
moved
what I'm saying.
on.
Is I can probably invest, a 90-minute movie.
It's a waste of time. It's like burning that time because it's like you won't get anything out of it. So
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I'll still try to honor Ryan's request, and maybe I'll buy that 4K Blu-ray.
Buy the thing. Watch the Blu-rays I sent you over 10 years ago, probably at this point. So
Yeah,
it's embarrassing now. So I'm just gonna keep this going.
The one thing no one anticipated is Dave Chen has no shame.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Bo Pullman from Lincoln, Nebraska donated and sent the following message. Hello, David, Devindra, and Jeff. If you recall the 1917 episode of your podcast, Jared from Omaha left a donation with a message announcing his year-end movie forum at the local Alamo Drafthouse. As I type this, I've just returned home from that event, and what an awesome time we had. Most attendees like me came completely alone, but hosts Jared and Ryan were so kind and welcoming to all of us. Along with answering trivia questions and winning prizes, we discussed 10 topics about 2019 releases, overlooked movies, guilty pleasures, and our biggest surprises, to name a few. We passed the microphone around for over 3 hours, and by the end of the night, we were making plans for meeting up again soon. Nothing quite matches the elation of finding others who share a passion in common. I'm grateful for you guys putting out Jared's message for us to hear, and for Jared and Ryan for being great hosts and new friends. If you're in the Omaha-Lincoln area, send a message to the Post-Credit Scene, which is on facebook.com/thepostcreditscene, to join them when they meet up next. I've been a listener for years. Thanks for what you guys do. The Nebraska franchise of Slash Filmcast listeners has been born. We're like Fight Club all up in here, guys.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So good.
First of all, I want to say the Post-Credit Scene is such a great name for an association of people, right?
Yeah,
it's such a cool, like that's our scene, is the post-credit scene. That's so good. So good. And secondly, I want to say this is what happens when we don't do anything. People do it. We should have been doing this for years. We should have been going around the country, having live events, doing stuff. And better people than we are doing it on their own. And kudos to them.
Indeed. Well, that's one way of interpreting it, Jeff. Another way of interpreting it is, hey, we're like Tyler Durden all up in here. We have like a Decatur franchise. We have a Nebraska franchise. We just got to keep setting this up, and pretty soon we're going to have franchises all around the country. And Project Mayhem.
Then we take down capitalism, baby.
Yeah. Project Mayhem will be underway. So, all right.
We should note that Devindra just sent to all of us the receipt for Firefly, the complete series on Blu-ray, with a shipping address to David Chen. You probably don't even live there anymore.
I don't live there anymore.
Ordered on December 31st, 2014.
Yeah. So
there's a little note there too. I believe it says you have no excuse now.
That was the same night they recorded Hamilton live, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, thanks for all your donations. If you want to send a one-time donation, paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/filmcast. Of course, if you want to support us by donating $0, very easy to do that. Go to the Apple Podcast app, go to /filmcast podcast listing, and just leave a star rating. It literally takes less than 10 seconds to do. If you haven't done it yet, what are you waiting for? Probably, I don't know, you're listening to this in your car and you're saying, hey, next time I stop my car, I'm going to do that thing that David's suggesting right now. I'm saying, today, make that today that you do it. Pull over the car, take out the phone, rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really does help a lot. Okay, let's move on to our review of the rhythm section. Jeff, I'm sorry. I hope you didn't feel like I put you two on the spot. I wanted to spar with you about that show.
I know, it was fun. I said dumb things, and I know I said dumb things.
Okay.
I shouldn't have said so many dumb things.
Okay.
But I truly did have that feeling.
Yeah,
to me
it's a completely legitimate. Yeah, I'm very curious if you think it actually is reality TV, because if you
I'm
think
sure
it
doesn't feel anything like that. I'm sure it has nothing to do with it. But I had gotten it into my head that it was some show about high school kids and falling in love with each other, and I was like, I don't care.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I've only seen one episode. Okay. That was from the trailer of The Rhythm Section, the newest movie by director Reed Morano. It stars Blake Lively as a woman seeking revenge against those who orchestrated a plane crash that killed her family. We are in January, folks, which means that the movies that come out aren't that good in general. However, this is a movie that's directed by a extremely talented director. She used to be a cinematographer. She helped to create The Handmaid's Tale, the hit Hulu series.
She did the cinematography for Frozen River.
Yeah,
didn't realize that.
Yeah, she was a cinematographer before she became a director. Very, very talented. Blake Lively, this woman can open films. I say that completely in earnest. The Shallows, A Simple Favor, even Age of Adeline. All those movies did well. They weren't runaway success. Like, they didn't make $500 million, but they all were very successful given the budgets that they had. So this is a movie that is not based on an existing franchise. It's based on a book, but it's not based on like a Marvel comic or anything like that. It seems like the kind of movie that we should all want to be coming out in theaters more. And yet, absolutely no one showed up to go see this movie this weekend. I think it made less than $3 million, which is very, very bad. And so
I saw it on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Of opening, new movies you can watch on Thursday nights, and Thursday night of its opening weekend, it was placed in a screen at my multiplex that I didn't know existed.
Yeah, same with my place too. Like they gave it one of the smaller screens, right?
It was one where when I bought my ticket online, I looked at the seating and I was like, well, that can't be right. There's some error in the HTML because this is all wonky and off center. And then I walked into that screening room and I was like, oh, that was accurate.
That's one row of minivan seats.
This is not how movie theaters are supposed to be made. Somehow they squeezed one last screen in here and all the seats are just all off center. There's like an aisle in the weird side. I don't understand it, but that's where they put.
It didn't just do badly, by the way. Like, I'm looking at the numbers here. It is the worst opening ever for a film playing in over 3,000 theaters. 2.8 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ever.
Pretty rough. So here's my question for you, Devendra Hardawar, is did the movie deserve to make more money than what it did this weekend?
Oh, probably not. No. Like, this seems about right.
It's kind of like we're kicking the dog a little bit, though. You know?
It's already dead. It's already dead. Here's the thing. Like you're saying, Dave, I think this is a movie that is something I should be able to enjoy in the way that you could kind of enjoy Anna. Like, I enjoy spy movies. I enjoy action movies. I enjoy B-grade spy action movies all the time. And I'm really digging Reed Morano. I think Blake Lively can be a great lead actress. And I think she's genuinely good in this movie. But this movie, I will say, it is dragging. It's not rushing. This is a movie that drags and drags and drags, and it just feels like everything it does, just the basic premise is, oh man, she lost her family and now she wants revenge, and that's it. And I think the movie spends a lot of time really trying to bake that into you, but man, this is territory where it's like Jason Bourne, they found him floating in the ocean. It just found him, and then the character, the story, like the ways we've seen movies like these go, they've just been all done in so much more interesting ways. Even like Atomic Blonde, which is a movie I adore, I absolutely love. It does a lot of like very stereotypical things within the genre really well and really stylishly, with a flair that this movie doesn't quite do. I think I usually like Reed Morano's style, but when it comes to the action here, first of all, there's not much in this movie. Like, it takes a while for us to get to anything resembling an action scene. And the way it's shot is very, it feels confusing. It feels like Paul Greengrass light at times. Like, it's a little more stable. It's not as shaky, but it's also like a very soft focus. There's a shootout in this movie where she is like shooting somebody in a doorway behind her, and it is like the lowest depth of field possible.
Depth of field, yeah.
All you see is she's shooting a blob in the background, and that is the interesting aspect of this action scene.
This is a real. So I want to comment on a couple things you said. Number one, Agreed that I think Blake Lively is awesome. Like she's
great.
Not only is she good in this movie, she's consistently good. I mean, did you guys see The Shallows? Right, it's a movie. She is the only actor in like 90% of that movie, and she's awesome. She's amazing. She really commits to every single thing she does, including this movie. Right?
Acting her butt off in this in this movie.
She's
like, I am acting.
Yeah, she's really good. Okay, so she's amazing, not just in this movie, but in movies in general. So let's put that out there. The second thing is, this is the first movie I think I've ever seen that I felt like, hey, cool it on the anamorphic, please. It's a movie that's shot in what's called anamorphic format, and that impacts the aspect ratio of the image, right? So the anamorphic aspect ratio is, I think, 2.40 to 1, right? So like basically the length of the screen is 2.4 times the height of the screen. So it's a very like kind of wide image. And there are special lenses that you can use to shoot an anamorphic that have like really cool effects. You can achieve very shallow depth of field. And that's what this movie does. But it does it so much. Like, I love anamorphic. It's beautiful when somebody's shot anamorphic. This movie, it goes to anamorphic. It goes full anamorphic. You should never go full anamorphic.
During high, fast-moving action scenes, it just feels like, what are you What are you doing?
And to be fair, just being anamorphic does not necessarily mean you need to shoot shallow depth of field. It's something that anamorphic is capable of, providing this very interesting-looking shallow depth of field. But this movie leans into it so hard that it actually becomes distracting, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's one thing I want to bring up, like one action scene. So like there's a car chase in this movie, as is demanded in every spy movie. It is shot entirely from like the passenger side of the car. Like it seems like all a one take too.
Yeah.
So like there is something interesting to it. I think some of my that is a perspective scene in a lot of my like favorite chase scenes, like Ronin or the Bourne Supremacy. And I think there's some aspects of that chase, like you could deconstruct it and be like, oh, this is a really interesting way to present this action scene because it really puts you in, the insanity of it. But it's also like so shallow at times where it's like the camera's racing to keep up with like whatever they're driving past. Like it's you can't really get a sense of speed or place or anything. So it fails as an action scene because of that. And it's unfortunate.
I have more to say about that, but we'll save it for spoilers. Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on the rhythm section?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on the rhythm section are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
Oh, what a pleasant surprise.
Revenge flicks tend to have guns. Over the top is how it is done. But when an agent is trained and realism's maintained, what gets assassinated is the fun.
Excellent. Excellent, Jeff. That's one of my favorite ones.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
Yeah. So it's we talked a lot about Anna, and in the context of Anna, a lot of really excellent of what is a very, I think, cool subgenre. This revenge flick, and usually the joy of the revenge flick is the satisfaction you want to have of the character getting revenge.
Yeah.
Right?
That is usually it, yes.
And how do you create a desire for that satisfaction? Well, this is a very tried and true thing. If you can think of something like Kill Bill, right?
Yeah,
it's a revenge film where a woman goes and becomes something that she would never was before. She becomes this assassin. And a lot of these movies we've been talking about, it's just an average woman.
To be clear, she was already.
To be fair, I think she was already an assassin for a living.
She was an assassin. She was part of an assassin group.
Right. Yeah. All right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Guys, come on.
Yeah.
Stick with me.
This movie lacks motivation, I'd say. Yeah.
But there are a lot of movies where you have a person, they go through an extraordinary thing, and they become an assassin, and you want to see them assassin things. And the reason you want to do that, the reason I brought up Kill Bill, is it's very personal, and that's how you create that desire. It's very personal. It becomes this thing of like, we as the audience want that for them. What this movie does is a very sad thing, which is a plane went down and her family died in a plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
But there was literally nothing personal about it at all. Nothing personal about it. It is dry and it has much more to do with geopolitical things and, you know, it may be ripped from the headlines, maybe realistic, but not personal, and certainly not something where I find myself wanting that visceral revenge because it was so. Now, what the movie does to try to make up for that is gives us about a half an hour of how bad her life got because of it.
Yes.
And it wallows in that. This movie is lugubrious and
good
slow.
use of the word. Wow.
Thank you. It is a wallowing slog of a movie. And you go, okay, well, as soon as we meet our cool, trainer, that's what's going to happen. We're going to become a weapon. We're going to transform into an assassin. And how do we do that? We are going to have to do some insane stuff, man. That's another trope of these kinds of films. This subgenre is
you gotta get a montage.
You need a montage. You gotta go through something. You gotta be turned from just an average woman into an assassin. Or in this movie, you can jog a few times, I guess, and you can shoot a gun at a shooting range and then go for a swim.
Take a very, very cold swim.
Very cold swim. Very, very cold swim.
I do wonder how cold the water was when she did that, because that is one of those things, like, it's hard to fake too.
Yeah, she's acting her guts out in this movie.
Yeah.
Acting it, she's bringing it. But to what end? This movie, and then there are twists and turns we'll get to that. Okay, all right. I guess that was supposed to be interesting. This movie never does anything that is remotely interesting to me. I agree with you, Devindra, that car chase is pretty fun and well shot and is a novel.
I don't know if it's well shot, but it is interesting. Yeah,
it is novelly shot. It is uniquely shot, and to that I was like, oh, hey, that's something.
Yeah, it's more like, I've never seen this done before, and then I think a minute into it, I'm like, oh, this is why this was never done before. Maybe.
Yeah. It attempts to get a heartbeat for a second, and then it just doesn't. And I think I understand what the motivation was. I think the motivation for this whole movie was like, what if those assassin movies, but real, like real, except that's not what's fun about these assassin movies. What's fun about these assassin movies is how crazy over the top and fun they can be, as we talked about with Anna and Atomic Blonde, and how it becomes this wish fulfillment of like, you done me wrong, now I am your worst nightmare. Except she's not anybody's worst nightmare. She's just sort of like plodding her way through it, and every reveal that happens in this movie is like someone just walks up to her and says it. It's not. It's unfortunate because Blake Lively's fun, and this genre can be fun, but this movie is zero fun for me.
I want to get to spoilers real quick, but I'll just say that to piggyback off of something that Jeff Kanata said, I think the issue really is one in tone, right? This movie is so bleak. It's so dark. But the problem with having an extremely bleak, dark tone for your movie is you have to have like a solid story to back that up, in my opinion. And the story is completely ludicrous. It just is ridiculous. It makes so many things about the story make no sense whatsoever. It's very, very over the top. I mean, you find her being a prostitute at the beginning of the movie because her life has gone way downhill. She's addicted to drugs, and it's like, okay, I get it, but it's like an over the top version of what would happen to someone for which, like, who has suffered through something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't let up in terms of how over the top it is throughout the course of the runtime. And so I just think it's a matter of the tone not matching the material, right? It's just so dark. It's like, let's be ultra realistic. But then the plot is just really pretty dumb. So that's how I feel about the movie. But there are some good things about it. I think there are a few actually pretty great sequences. And Blake Lively's great. It's fun to watch her do her thing here. But overall, it's not a good movie. So let's talk about spoilers for the rhythm section starting right now. So I will say I actually really love that car chase sequence. I think it's really well done. And what's great about it is how like chaos seems to be breaking loose and exponentially getting bigger and bigger as you realize like this is the thing about this movie is she is terrible at this, like, and that's one of the big problems too is it's not really clear if the movie thinks she's bad at her job, you know what I mean, like, because the very final shot of the movie is her being like walking into the distance with this total badass music playing, but like she contributed almost nothing to this entire process because she's so she messes up every single assassination job other than the last one, which wasn't even one of the jobs, right? Like every assassination job she messes up in some major way, including in one instance not killing the person. So
which really is the job one of being an assassin, I would say.
Number one priority is the person
like that's the first question you ask is like, did you assassinate the person?
Forget about the like nice to haves, Jeff. Like
you
know, like did you leave a lot of like DNA of yours behind? Did you leave any like the weapon? Like those are nice.
How many other people got hurt?
How many collateral damage?
The first question I'm going to ask when you walk through the door is, did you assassinate the person I told you to assassinate?
Yes.
Or the answer is no.
Or did the person incidentally die as a result of actions you took? You know, like either one would be acceptable.
Yeah.
But if the answer is no, then you're not very good at what you're doing, right?
You really didn't finish, you know? Just saying.
So she's really bad, but that's kind of refreshing on some level because hey, like
hard.
It's actually realistic. Like, hey, this person who is like strung out and had been through this trauma wouldn't necessarily be the most skilled assassin after however long they trained her. What?
Yeah, after 3 weeks of running through the forest a few times.
I do think the sequence is great when she's walking into the water and they do it all in one long shot, and that's like really like it's like. Do they have like water heaters like right off the screen? Who knows how they did it? But it looks like she actually did it. Whether or not she actually did it, it looks like she actually did it, and that's amazing. And then there is a knife fight that she has with Jude Law, like while he's training her, that happens all in one long shot as well. That I thought was actually really impressive. Plus the car chase scene all happens in one long shot. So there's like a handful of really visually arresting sequences in this movie.
The knife fight in his little shack.
In his kitchen, yeah. That's all one shot, yeah.
I didn't even notice it was one shot because I could barely see anything. Like it was so dark that I couldn't see. I could barely make out Jude Law's silhouette. I couldn't make out like the actions of what they were doing with their knives. I saw furniture crashing. It could just be that the theater I saw it in just wasn't projecting bright enough. But it seemed fine. Like in other scenes, it just seemed like a really bad idea to set an action scene in a dimly lit cabin.
Fair enough. Yeah. You weren't as impressed as I was with the action scene.
I couldn't see it. I wanted to see it.
So the trouble for the movie begins right at the top, where there is a journalist trying to find her for no reason. Like as far as I understand, there's no reason he's trying to find her. Like, do we ever even learn what he's looking for?
He's got that wall with everyone's picture on it, and her picture's on it. So well,
he was like, you're a missing piece of the puzzle or something. Yeah. She's another victim, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Like what does he want? He never articulates what is his goal with.
Listen, every journalist creates a wall for their big stories, in their bedrooms, basically. Like you got to have that. You gotta really go out there with the visuals. Otherwise, how would you write a story?
Also, you've been tracking this woman for a long time and ostensibly know where she is.
Yeah.
But rather than just walk up to her and go, hey, I may have some information about your dead family, you go, you know what I'll do, is I'll pay for sex with her and then get in the room and drop that bomb because...
Yeah. So here's my theory about why the journalist character was included is that, like, I think the politics of this movie come straight out of the 90s action film.
Yep.
Where it's like, oh, these brown people are bombing things for reasons that aren't super clear to us. And so we need to have Middle Eastern characters in here that aren't terrorists, so that the movie doesn't come off as like a piece of racist propaganda. And that's why you have the journalist at the beginning, and that's why you have kind of the rich family that finances her actions, is that otherwise the movie would just be ridiculously simplistic and otherizing in its depiction of
parents of a good brown person.
Yes,
a revolutionary.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So that's my theory as to why that character's in there. Because otherwise, I don't think he serves any purpose other than this is like she gets that guy killed, even when she's like. She's not even trying to get that guy killed. And she, like, actually, of the two people that she gets killed, one of them is an accident in the movie, right?
Listen, guys, I've been watching a lot of Sesame Street these days. It comes with the territory. There is a Cookie Monster spy like thing that they do once in a while. And I feel like Cookie Monster has been a better spy than Blake Lively in this movie.
She is very bad,
but she's extraordinary before she has any training, because within 5 minutes of looking for the bomber, she finds him in a cafe.
Finds him in a cafe, has a gun pointed directly at him.
The movie could be over right then. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe that. I was like, oh, she's just gonna kill some random brown person, and that's how this movie's gonna.
That would have been great, actually. They had actually done that, and like
she's just gonna go and kill the first Middle Eastern person she sees, and that's how it's gonna get quick. No, she literally found this guy immediately,
who we find out is a terrorist, right?
Immediately finds the terrorist she was looking for, the guy who created the bomb. Immediately finds him, no problem.
Well, it's also they knew where he was. Like nobody. It's not like he was in hiding. It's just that I think the secret was nobody knew what he actually did, and she kind of blew that part. Like
it's a weird thing to like just put that on a plate, and then the whole rest of the movie is like, oh, let's go kill the guy that you could have killed easily. Then it's a really strange, really strange
structure. Well, here's the thing, Jeffrey, is that the big mystery of the movie, right, is who is behind that guy, right?
Yeah.
Who's the guy behind that guy who
U-17?
Who's U-17, right? That's who we want to know about. And the answer is Sterling K. Brown for some reason.
The only other person we've met in the movie.
Well, that was hilarious. It's like when they bring up like, hey, we still haven't found who U-17 is, and I'm like, my mind is like flipping through the Rolodex of who's been in the movie. I'm like, there's only like 6 characters in this movie, so like, it's gonna be one of them, basically, right?
Yeah.
And she has a sexual relationship with him because they're both attractive people. So that's why.
That's why. It's a classic James Bond thing of like, you have sex with the person who ends up being the evil person, I guess. I don't know. This is, by the way, a movie by the Bond producers. And I found that to be kind of interesting. Like, was this their attempt at like a more female-driven series, and now they're going to be like, well, this is why we didn't want to do this, guys. Even though we know No Time to Die has one. So
she finds Sterling K. Brown because the guy tells her where he is.
Yeah.
I mean, and then everything she learns is because someone just straight up tells her this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's no spying.
She's like a young recruit, basically. Like she's just taking orders from the guy over the radio. By the way, I want Sterling K. Brown's life from this movie. Like, I just want to like live in Madrid and just like chill out and have espressos and also have this massive villa for no reason.
You got to be evil, like the fruits of the devil.
Yeah.
The coolest thing about this movie, is the title. And it's a cool title. And the idea
it
that
probably led to nobody seeing this movie, though.
But
just throwing that out.
The idea that you have to deal with your rhythm section in order to do anything could have been a major spine of this whole film.
Yes,
like it's the title of the movie. You have a neophyte killer who is just a girl. She's we see the flashback. She's just a girl who was obsessed with selfies. That's all she was. But she becomes a killer, a hardened assassin. And the way she does that is she has to deal with a rhythm section one time in an offhanded comment and never again. Like, why isn't that theme completely reinforced over and over and over again about having to deal with your rhythm section. About
it should be a part of the score. It should be like a part of the soul of the movie.
The inner life, her inner life should be as big a character as anything else in this movie, because it would make it fascinating and interesting, like how difficult it is to control yourself in these situations that are larger than life. But it's a completely squandered opportunity. It's just a title that some throwaway line. I can imagine maybe in the book there's lots of rhythm section-y stuff, but in the movie it's just a complete throwaway.
Yeah, we should clarify that the rhythm section is a reference to like your body, basically, right? Like think of
how you breathe.
Your heart is
your
the
heart
drums.
Beating,
is the drums. Your breath is the bass. And that she's like all out of control at the beginning of the movie, and then she needs to get her rhythm section under control. I think there's two big problems with that whole situation, right? One is that there's no progress in her rhythm section. Like one thing is like she starts and like she's very bad, and then by the end she's like, okay, I finally got it under control. You know?
Yeah, or you see her working on that or thinking about that in any way whatsoever.
Doesn't really happen. And the second thing is there's this whole setup at the beginning of Jude Law kind of promising her that, hey, you know, she shoots a target, and he's like, great job, that's the easy part. And she's like, what's the hard part? And he says, living with it, you know, which is like something that someone might say, you know, in a very cliche Reddit post or something like that. But I think that the problem is that the movie doesn't have the goods when it comes to like, hey, taking revenge actually is really unsatisfying.
This has never been explored before in anything.
Well, it's been explored before. I would actually be okay if it explored it, but it did not explore it. It just was like, it just was like, hey, remember this whole thing about revenge being bad? Well, guess what? Not us. We didn't remember it at all, because by the end of the movie, she's like framed to be this kind of badass hero who can't wait to get her new, like the next sort of entry in this franchise of her being super cool assassin.
Don't go chasing monsters lest you become a monster yourself. So profound.
They didn't even follow through on that, is what I'm saying, Devindra. It's like, if it said that, that'd be like, that would at least be like somewhat different than John Wick, you know. Anyway. But like, it's just not, doesn't even have the follow through on that. So
I will say though,
it doesn't have the gravitas of John Wick, which is crazy to say.
Doesn't have the dogs of John Wick either. Yeah. I agree, Jeff. Like, the title sounds cool. I do think like trying to talk about this movie with people, they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?" The rhythm section. Like, I do think that was a profoundly bad decision to name this movie after, I guess, a book series that maybe not everybody knows. There's probably a little more room for that. And I'll say, if anybody else watched this movie and was let down by it, go check out, I'm thinking of like all the cool little spy movies that I really enjoy. I really liked Anton Corbijn's The American, starring George Clooney. And that is a nice, chill Italian spy movie with Clooney in suits, killing bad guys. It's a slow burn, but it's a slow burn in a good way. This is a slow burn in a bad way.
This is a slow, and then there's not really much burn.
It's just a slow, and that's it.
Yeah,
no burn.
There's no burn.
We wish there was burn.
You need some burn.
You need some burn when it comes to the assassin movies. That's going to bring us to the end of our review of the rhythm section. And thanks for listening. You can find more episodes of this podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from AdamWarlock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. And this episode was produced by Beatty Zhang. Edited, I should say, by Baby Zhang. And stay tuned to hear what we'll be discussing next week. In the meantime, Jeff Cannata, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
Well, you can always follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Cannata, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T. I do a video game podcast called DLC that you can find at 5by5.tv/DLC. You can also find it wherever you get podcasts. And I do a live play Dungeons & Dragons show where I'm making up the epic story. So if you want to see me put my money where my mouth is, that's where I do it. It's called The Dungeon Run. And this is a show I would love for you to check out and let me know what you think of. You can find it a number of ways. One is by searching on YouTube, by searching for The Dungeon Run on YouTube. Another is listening to it as an audio show. It's a fun audio show. I do a bunch of voices on the show, by the way. I did Sean Connery last week.
Give us your Sean Connery.
Yeah.
You got to tune into the Dungeon Run to hear that, man.
Okay, fair enough.
It is an audio podcast. You can find it wherever you get audio podcasts by searching for the Dungeon Run, and it's also recorded live Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time at caffeine.tv/The Dungeon Run.
How about you, Devindra?
Oh, I'm on Twitter at Devindra, and I write about tech at Engadget.com. And check out the Engadget podcast. I'm co-hosting that with Sherlyn Lowe from Engadget. We're talking about all sorts of fun stuff. And check out for a review of Mythic Quest later this week.
I have a YouTube channel at youtube.com/Dave Chensky. That's Dave Chen SKY. And check out my podcast, Culturally Relevant, at culturallyrelevantshow.com, where I interview cool people, artists, writers, directors from around the internet and around the world. Next week, we will be discussing Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey. I think the full title is actually Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, which it's a mouthful, guys. I think
It's an awesome title. I love that.
Really? Do you like?
That's awesome.
It's like one of those titles, like you know that Fiona Apple title. You know, like she has those really long album titles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, you're a fan?
Stylish. Yeah,
Stylish?
I dig that stuff.
Does that mean you can commit to saying the entire title anytime it's mentioned on next week's episode of the podcast?
I will commit to that. Yes.
Okay.
It's not going to fit well into a limerick, but I'll do my best.
Oh, yeah. I think by the time you finish saying the title, the limerick is over, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
I run out of syllables.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week for our new and updated format. Looking forward to your thoughts at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. See you later.